Hello, Aveda. Welcome to Five in a Flash with B. Carmichael. I'm Kyle Miner with the Aveda show team. We'll start the way we start all events, and that is with the mission. And today I would really just love for you to reflect on how the mission is impacting your life. Is there a word or phrase that you particularly resonate with? You've heard me say this a bunch of times in the last couple of weeks. I just really love our mission from a way it can guide you as you're moving through these uncertain times. So give it a thought over the course of the next few hours and try to live the mission in your own unique way. Of course, we have a moment of wellness, and we are always lucky to be joined by a video message from Helga Hefner.
Hi everyone, welcome to your Moment of Wellness. My name is Helga Hefner and I'm here today to talk about hydration. Yes, drinking water. So how much water do you actually really need? You need at least half your body weight in ounces. And I would suggest add a pinch of Himalayan sea salt to your water. That way you're replenishing some of the trace minerals that sometimes gets flushed out when we're drinking a lot of water. So try to link drinking a glass of water with an existing habit that you have. An example, everybody's brushing their teeth. So it's great that after you're brushing your teeth, go ahead and have a glass of water. Everybody's eating at least 1, 2, or 3 meals a day. So before you eat at least 30 minutes, have a glass of water. Before you grab a snack, doesn't matter what kind of snack it is, or before you go for a beverage, a coffee or a soda or an energizing drink or something like that, have a glass of water and then just check in with yourself. Oftentimes when we're low in energy, we're really dehydrated, and that's a sign of dehydration. Oftentimes when we think we're hungry, we're really not hungry. We actually are thirsty. So if you start making this a conscious habit, that you'd go for a glass of water before you go for anything to eat or anything to drink, and you want to pick me up, you want some energy, a glass of water is going to get you there. So with that, cheers to you. Stay hydrated, be well, and be safe till the next time.
And then, with that said, I am going to just remind all of you that if you're not already following B on social media, I highly recommend you do so. She's at bcarmichael13. And you can see an example of some of the beautiful inspirational work she posts on your screens now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to B, and we do have a quick question just to start the session, B. What mannequin head are you using, and where did that come from?
So I've got two. The one that's on the stand, which I'm going to be using today, is actually a competition head, and it's from Pivot Point. So both of these are from Pivot Point. This one is a little bit shorter. So the one that we've done the hard set on, just to, if you wanted to follow along, this is what you needed to have completed. This one is a bit shorter, but this head has beautiful, beautiful hair, and it's super long. They are expensive. These heads are more expensive, but they're worth the investment if you're really into styling. But both from Pivot Point.
Awesome.
Okay, well, welcome. Thanks again for joining in. And we are going to do Five in a Flash today. So what is that? Well, Five in a Flash is going to be 5 bridal looks from one set. And I think, especially at the moment, because everything's changing, and maybe we might be doing consultations virtually a little bit more with our guests. I think particularly with weddings, I think we need to be in a position where we can offer a number of looks, or maybe sort of move from one look to the next when we're doing the trial. So instead of just having one idea solidly, I think it's nice if you can change it up. So that's what we're going to do. So what I asked you to do on social media, if you saw it, was just complete a hard set. And I'm going to just briefly explain what we've done so far. So on both mannequins, I use Speed of Light because this is such a fantastic product to help remove any of the water from the hair. We've then gone in with Emollient, and that's from roots to ends, as was Speed of Light, layered over the top. And then we just dried that in. When I've dried it in though, instead of stretch drying and keeping it super, super straight and flat, I've actually used a round brush and tried to create a little bit of bounce even in the blow dry. Then we've gone in and I've used a Marcel iron and air control, and we've just literally gone through. We've started at the front and at the top, which is where I always start when you're doing anything bridal or event hair, because this area is the most important. So we started at the top and then literally worked from the side to the opposite side. And that's how I would do a hard set. One of the reasons why I do that is so that every single curl that I create, I'm not knocking anything with my hands as I move around the head. So these now obviously have had the clips taken out. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start brushing this through. So whenever you do a hard set, you really, really want to make sure that you're not frightened to brush it. I think a lot of people, maybe when you do a set in a different way, might be a bit nervous to brush. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to go straight in with a brush. I'm not going to go in with my comb or fingers. And I'm just literally going to really, really brush that all the way to the ends. And we're going to then start joining in the rest of the curls. So before we did this, I just started to massage her root area, and that helps to get rid of some of the parting, so some of the sectioning pattern that you might be able to see when you do a set. And I'm using my flat brush, and I'm not being particularly delicate with the brush. And this is why I just adore doing quite a strong set to start with. So when I've done it, I probably take, I would say, about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to do a set like this. So on a bride, I would normally have spoken to her about hair care. She would have invested, if she hadn't already, she would have invested in a really, really good shampoo and conditioner, and her hair would be in a good place. She probably would have had, you know, shine-on treatments, and the fabric of her hair would be super, super good. So I tend to, before the day of the wedding, get them to shampoo and condition their hair and actually dry it off. So that when I come in, I actually work on dry hair and I'm just creating movement in the hair as my base. So you can see as we've gone through, it's brushed out really, really well. And she's got all this gorgeous texture. What I love about a hard set is that you can keep brushing it, but it won't disturb the movement. So we're going to go, yes.
Real quick question. Did you say how long you allowed that to set? Or
so it normally takes me about 25 minutes to do a set, and then you've just literally got to leave it, I would say even 10 minutes, just so that it cools down. But that's also why we roll it and pin it. You can then spray it on the top with air control. It just helps to cool everything down more quickly. So the whole thing, I would say, before you brush out, 35 minutes.
And then did you curl that away from the face or toward the face?
So I did a classic hard set. So for me, this was straight down. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through how we just create a little bit of texture in the hair. And the reason why I've picked a classic set, we've gone back through the top, and we've literally gone down at the sides, and then through the back it was brickwork. It means that it's a great foundation, and I can put this hair up, I can put it down, I can do all sorts of things with it, I can move the parting from side to side. Whereas if I set from a particular parting at this stage, that's what I have to kind of go with. So I just want to really be able to move the hair around and see what looks best. So I'm actually going to go for a side parting. I think I'm going to go on this side. And I'll spin her around so you can see what I'm doing. So often when you do a set like this, sometimes what you want to do is you want to refine certain areas of the hair of the set. And I think particularly when we're going to start this off with a Hollywood wave, I think it's really important when you do something like this that you're kind of aware that you're going to refine the texture or refine certain areas. And there's lots and lots of ways that you can do this. And there's lots of ways that you can use products to obviously help you refine that, whether it's just to reduce any movement or frizzing the hair. So I'm going to show you now, if you want to actually change the position of the wave at the front. So often when we're doing kind of like a Hollywood wave, where we want to kind of accentuate is actually around the eye area and the cheekbone. So when we were looking at our class that I did with Janelle, when we were looking at bridal balance, something like this, kind of like bringing out the eye and the cheekbone area is really, really important. So you're going to need your Marcel iron, but it needs to be one that isn't a spring clamp. And you can just take like one section from the part.
While you're doing that, what kind of brush were you just using?
So that brush is a YS Park brush, and it's actually my favorite brush. It's got holes through the back, so it really lets air in, but also because of the bristles of two different levels, you can really get into a set and really brush a set out quite quickly. Sometimes if you've got one level of bristle, you're almost just brushing the outside, and it can take quite a while to brush the set out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for the movement in this section. So for example, I just want to see where naturally it creates a curve. So we've got one just here, so just through that front area, which is in the perfect place. And obviously my first step is helping me create that S-bend and that movement. So my Marcel iron is on the hottest heat, so you do need to heat this up. And I'm going to go in with the Marcel iron, and I'm just going to roll forward and then hold this in place.
And B, do you know the brand and diameter of your iron?
So this is, we work in millimeters. I'm trying to think what this would be. So this is a 25 mil, which I think is about an inch, I think. And it's a wham iron. So you can see I've created the movement in here. Now I've got another kind of curl, hopefully that you can see. And I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to roll that forward. And you can start to see it creates that really strong movement. So as I work down the hair, I'm going to find my next curl, which is here. Just come in at the bottom and roll forward. And if I've got really asbestos hands, but then I think I must have lost all my fingerprints now. But you could use a comb when you do this. And this just helps to create that really, really beautiful wave, and just for you quickly to get it in the place that you want it. So once that's done, I can then come over and refine the texture. So this, again, is not being too scared to just brush hair through. When I come round to the front, I can just give that a brush and blend it in all the way through. And I've created that really lovely movement. So I'm just going to use some silver clips and just to clip this now in place. I'm going to swap over now to a mini mason piercing, and this has just got a slightly softer bristle. So now I just want to kind of be caressing almost the top of the hair. And because my set's in, I can very, very quickly and easily see the pattern and the texture that's forming. So different brushes really, really help out. I often use the back of my hand and push the brush on the back of my hand. And you want something that's like got a really, really strong bristle, but then you also want something that has got like a softer bristle. So you're almost caressing, if you like, the top of the hair. As we come in through the bottom, I'm just going to quickly work around the back and the opposite side. Now, when you've got length at the bottom, what you can do just to finish this area off, particularly if it's really, really layered, is just take a small comb and just literally back brush or back comb those very, very ends. Then go back to your softer bristle brush and just brush them in. And you can do that all the way around. So I like these blue combs. They're really good for that, where you've got a wide end and a smaller end, particularly if your bridal hair is really layered. Now, if I was going to do any hair extensions, then maybe I was going to add a hair piece in for length or thickness, I would actually do that before I do my steps. So I'm not a great believer in setting the hair, setting the extension, then putting the extension in separately. I think it works better if you put the extension in and set it along with the hair, because then you don't get the separation, and sometimes that's what can happen, is you get the extension behaving slightly differently. So obviously then we can start to spray this in place. I'm just going to use air control for a light hold, because we're going to keep changing the look up. So this is a really, really good way of just creating a texture or a Hollywood wave quite quickly. And it's all in the foundation of the set. It's everything that you do in the prep. So the grip products that you use, and then the way that you just brush the set through. So once we've got the texture, what we're going to do now is we're going to create almost kind of like an area behind the ear here, so that we get like a little bit of a tuck. And this is a really, really quick way of just making sure that the hair stays where you want it to. Oh, she's being naughty today. There we are. So through here, I'm just going to take a subsection, and I'm going to work out roughly where I want the hair to fall back to. So roughly about here. I'm now going to swap over, and I'm actually going to use a bit of control force, so slightly stronger. And I'm just going to spray in that area. Use the small tip of my comb, just give it a little brush through. And then I'm going to do the same, but I'm going to get this hair to kind of like sit on top of each other. So I'm almost using the products a bit like Velcro. Give a little comb through. And then on my last section, and take that out. And I'm just going to comb that all the way through. And depending on how much product I use, I can get like a really high shine, flat finish to the hair, or I can make it quite subtle. So just depending on how much I use. So at this stage, I'm just going to keep a clip in there until I'm happy with the position. And then I'm going to take a curvy grip. I like to use these curvy grips that have ridges. And the reason is we were talking about this briefly last week. They can kind of lock together so they don't move anywhere. And as we progress through the looks, you'll see that I use these to a minimum just to secure something in place. And I use a lot of small hairbands. So as I go in, I'm just going to make sure that I can cross this over and that they lock together. And then I'm going to use one through that top, and I try and work so that the colour is very, very close to the bride's hair colour. And we're just going to come through over the top. Now we've created this placement. This is really nice and strong. So if I've got a hair accessory that I want to put in, I do tend to do it this way. I tend not to put accessories in where they push back. So often with a comb, you should come in from this direction. I actually follow the direction of the hair, and then I push in, and then you can place the accessory. I like to work with accessories, so I just collect a lot of accessories and place them in the hair while I'm doing a trial, just so that the bride can get an idea of what it's going to look like. So we can see we've got a Hollywood wave, and that accessory isn't going to move anywhere. She's got a beautiful, beautiful wave, and that will literally last her all day. And you would add in more hairspray if you really wanted to secure the look. Okay, so super, super quick, super easy, all on the brush out, all on the prep work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into something that's a little bit more of a kind of like side swept idea. So I'm just going to take this out quickly. Has anyone got any questions so far?
Yeah, excuse me. When you have the guest shampoo at home and come in air dried, do you tend to put the product in their hair and then blow dry the product in?
Yes, absolutely. So I love that question. I very, very rarely work when I'm doing brides on wet hair. I like them to wash their hair, condition their hair, put treatment on if they want to, come in with it totally dry, and then I will put the product on dry hair often.
And then B, was the hair prepped with speed of light and emollient?
Yes, it was. Speed of light and emollient, and then I used air control to set with. So what we want to do now is we want to create a side sweep. So this is where we almost want to make the hair look like it's just swept over the shoulder, but we want to make sure it stays. So imagine you've got a bride who is going to go to a wonderful reception afterwards. And if it's not secure enough, obviously you can imagine we're going to lose this shape and this movement in her hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can secure it, but so it will still look like it's just swept over to one side. So we're going to take the top section out, and you want to aim, it all depends on thickness and density of hair, but you do want quite a large kind of top section. So I'm just going to the low point of reception, and I'm just going to curve round up towards her side parting. So it's almost like an off-center U shape, if that makes sense. But you want to make sure you do join up with the parting. I'm going to give this a little brush through, and then I'll show you the section. So when you're doing anything like this, you don't want your sections to be too neat and too perfect, because any severe lines in the hair will make it very difficult as you move on. What I am going to do is very, very gently just roll this up around my fingers as we work on this technique and pin it through the top. So again, just using my silver clips.
E, can you show us the back of the head? Is that possible?
Yes.
And then while you're doing that, do you have any tips for clean, perfect hair without flyaways?
It's all in the prep. So for me, you need to do a really, really beautiful, beautiful blow dry, first of all. If you want it super, super clean, I would flat iron it. And then almost like do, if you've got the ends that are being a bit naughty or a bit fluffy, use an oil, but then seal it in with grip. So seal it in with a hairspray. Brilliant hairspray, I have to say, is super, super good for that kind of thing. But you are going to create almost like a sticky grip kind of texture in the hair. So we've got this very, very relaxed section through the top. Just going to grab that bit there. And you do want it to be super, super relaxed. I think if you try and put straight lines in at this stage, this is where it kind of goes wrong. You could, if you wanted to, make it almost like a zigzag. So obviously our goal is to make this side sweep this side. So you're going to need hair bands, small elastics. So I tend to use, I hope you can see these, but I tend to use like really clear small elastics. And I use a lot of these, and I tend to use 2 at a time. So 2 on one section, just in case one does break. They are really strong, but just in case. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a foundation on this side. So almost like I'm working out where I want my side sweep to end up. So we've kept the hairline out, just in front of the ear, and I'm going to take a small subsection and I'm just going to curve it. So remember, you want no straight lines. If you do want to make it zigzag, feel free. I'm going to clip this hair out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. So now we should have a section that is in front of the ear and a section that is behind the ear. First of all, what I want you to do is I want to take the section that's behind the ear and just put a small band on this one. I'm just going to take this. When you place the band, you almost want to pull the section forward so it just sits behind the ear. So kind of there. And we're going to just take a couple of bands and put them through. So I use bands a lot for creating this kind of work. And I find that I think when you use bands, the looks that we're going to go for today are very much for a natural bride, or you might want to even call it the kind of like a boho kind of bride. So when you're using less kind of sort of stiff products or curvy grips and pins, it's much easier for you to create that kind of section. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a small piece of the front section and we're going to start to move back and include the back section. So I'm going to come through now. We'll take another section, so another curved section. Clip this out of the way. And I'm going to connect the two. So I'm going to come up a bit higher now. So I'm now going to take a piece of that front section and a piece of that back section. We're just going to come up a little bit higher. Sometimes when you're doing this kind of work, you can also stitch the hair as well. I've done that before when we use elastic. But when you stitch the hair, it's because you really, really know exactly what your bride wants. So this is more of a technique where I can keep on changing the look up quite a lot. So when I'm doing this, I tend to start off with texture first, so we can get the movement quite right. And then I always sort of start with, depending on the bride, but I tend to start with like a Hollywood wave. Then I'll go into something like this, where I call it the side swoop or side sweep. And then we'll do like half up, half down. And then as we move forward, we can put more hair up. So by the end of it, the brides actually had quite a few variations. And I think when you're doing things like this, I think if you can, particularly if the bride's not sure really what she wants or where she's going, I think this is a really good technique to do. So now I'm just going to come up slightly higher.
Bea, when you have a moment, can we see the back of the head again?
Absolutely. Just going to pop this band in. Thank you guys, you need to keep me right if you can't see. Okay, so now we've got three bands. So very, very loose, like just almost like your fingers have swept it through to the side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a last section, and this is where we're kind of almost like using her parting. You want to leave a little bit of hair out just in front of the ear. So this is kind of, I always say this section is always the section that the bride is the most conscious about, anything around the face. So I always leave that section clipped out and not banded in so that I can move that section around, or I can leave hair out if she wants me to. So our last banded section then, we're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to move her back round. And we're just going to connect our last piece at the front. I'm just going to move this round. And we're going to come up to the highest point. So you start, first of all, quite low, just behind the ear. And then you just work up around that section. So I'm just going to take that in and pop that band in. So it's almost like now we've got this run of like bands through this side. So I can now let the rest of the hair down, and this is where I start to dress it. So my foundation is in, and now it's all about kind of like the look at the front on this side. So I've still got my section off at the front on that side, so my small hairline section. You just turn around. And you can see how much I can really brush this through. And I honestly do think that's why whenever we do shoots or shows, we do tend to use a curling iron, a Marcel iron, more than anything else. So once I get to this stage, I'm going to then add in my last section. So this is where it changes a little bit. So now I'm going to do a set of curly grips. And I'm just going to literally carry on as though I was almost like I was doing a French twist now. So I'm going to come around and I'm just going to link it in, keeping that the same direction of the swoop. And I'm going to go back to my curvy grips and I'm just going to create a ladder. So the reason why I personally use bands and then go in this way is because you can get much more of a stronger foundation, particularly if this has got to last all day. So you imagine that you've got this kind of like half up, half down look, and we need to make sure that this stays in position all the way through. So just hooking each curvy grip together, and I'm also going over the band. So once that's in place, before I go any further, I'm now going to dress the front. So I can start to place my clips in again, just where I can see that movement. Remember, you always want to aim for sort of like cheekbone and eye area. Now I'm going to swap now just to my softer bristle brush as I come through on these ends. So when Janelle and I, we did a class, I don't know whether you guys managed to see it, but we did makeup, and we talked a lot about hair and kind of like the different types of brides that you could get. And I think there's so many different types. When we do bridal balance next week, I'm going to do more of a kind of structured look for you guys. So that you can see kind of like the difference and the difference of prep, I suppose, that goes into it. So light bit of hairspray. Also, if you really want to promote the curl, obviously this is something we do a lot at Aveda. It's just use a can of hairspray to create the dells. And then obviously, again, just because it's something that I really, really like to do, because I think it's quite difficult for a bride to imagine what their hair looks like without accessories, I can then just come back in and just put an accessory in for her. And I'm going to put a couple. So this then is such a strong foundation in the hair that even if she is dancing, you know, and it is a real party, this is something that will stay in her hair for her all the way through. And then you could, if I was going to finish this off and we were going to stay in this position, I would use a lot of brilliant hairspray. And then I would just use a drying stock over the top of it. So almost on the end of my hairdryer and really fix this in. But it kind of gives you an idea of then how to maintain like a side sweep in the hair. Okay. All right.
Hey, B.
So, yes.
How would you put the bobby pins in if you're not using hair accessories to mask them?
So if I was not doing that, I would just literally be careful of the last section that I did and almost kind of like fold it back over and almost create like a slight twist. I think this looks really nice with an accessory in it, but if you want it to be super, super natural, you would just have to fold your last section back over. Or even set it, you could set it in place.
Excellent. And then while we're transitioning to the next look, do you have any tips for super fine hair that doesn't hold a curl very well?
Truthfully, and I know this is going to sound, I think if it's for a bride, truthfully, I would always recommend extensions. I think if this is just for normal everyday, I said this last week, which I think quite a few people are surprised at. I absolutely love Be Curly on hair that doesn't hold curl as well, because Be Curly has memory to it. So I just find even with hair that doesn't accept curl very well, it's a really good product. Even just like a tiny, tiny amount, really, really helps you out. So we just go through, we just take these little bands out. So I think fine hair, I would use all my grip products, you know, like we were saying, you know, like your volumizing tonic, your thickening tonic, but then add a little bit of Be Curly in there as well.
And then
it's amazing stuff.
And then B, if you wanted to do that but make the look be a little more loose and casual, would you just pull out the pieces or make it?
Absolutely, yeah. You can make it much, much more casual. We're actually going to move into that kind of now. I think the trick with it is, and this is why I kind of like working in this way, is that when you put a set in, you can kind of adapt and change your texture with the products that you use. So you might, if you want to release some of the movement, you could put in something along the lines of texture tonic, which breaks it up even more. But you don't lose the wave in the hem. So there's lots of things, lots of ways that you can change the way that it looks with the product that you use. Okay, so hopefully you can see that the set's still in there. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take her head off. Obviously you couldn't do this to a guest. And give her a little shake. And pop her back. And this just sort of shows you how kind of like bouncy the texture is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on. We're going to do our half up and half down. So I'm just going to switch her around so you can see her from the front. And this time we're going to switch up the parting a little bit. So at this point, I might be talking to the guest about, you know, obviously like where do you wear your hair normally, if you tried it anywhere else. And this is where it's quite nice just to be able to adapt to look. So somebody gets like a real idea of kind of like different ways that they could wear their hair. So I'm just going to come through. Use her nose as a guide. Give her a little brush. And now we're going to split her into sections. And the sectioning that I'm going to do now I use quite a lot. And I think it's the easiest kind of like sectioning, particularly when you need to be fast. So if you're working from the side or a centre, it won't matter for the sectioning. I'm literally going to go through and I'm just going to separate the front from the back. And again, not too neat if you can help it. No perfect lines wherever possible. I'm just going to separate that. And do exactly the same then on the other side. So once you've got this out of the way and clipped away, we're then going to take a section just through the top. And this, again, is all about sort of density of the hair. It's very much how much volume maybe your model wants or your bride wants. So it's entirely kind of like up to you how big this section is through the back. So what I want to do is I want to work out roughly how much kind of like lift my guest wants. And again, this is where I prefer to use a band, but you can use clips if you want to. So I'm just going to take a section from one side to the other. And I'm just going to pop a band in through that top area. So when I'm doing the hair, so once the bride's made up her mind and she's like, do you know what, I really want this look. This is when maybe I might change the tools a little bit more and use, you know, more grips because we know what we're going for. But this is for somebody where I can just keep changing the look until we find what she kind of needs or what she likes. So one of the reasons why I tend to do a band is that very, very quickly and very easily I can just create and pull a little bit of texture through that top area. And it totally depends on how much I want to create, how much I want to pull. Lots of people, and there's all different ways that you can do this, will create these kinds of looks without the set. And they will do it, they'll put the wave in afterwards, which I do love as well. I think that's definitely an option. The challenge is I think it's longevity of the look. It's like how long will that lasts. And when you've got a set in the hair, or you've got a really good foundation, which tends to be why we always do them at Fashion Week and we do them for shoots, is because you can keep on brushing it through, changing it, brushing it through, and it holds and it lasts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm literally going to work with the two side areas, and I'm just going to spin it around just so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to take you through this side. So one of the things that I quite like to do is allow the guest to kind of like work out how much hair she would like out. So obviously if she'd like to have a little bit around the face, because I think if you do brides, this is always the area of kind of concern. It's always the area of where normally you put so many clips in and they'll say at the end, actually I'd like more hair around my face. And then you panic because you're like, how am I going to get it out now? So this is always a nice way of doing it. Sometimes I will even clip while I'm talking to my guests, literally clip the hair in place so that we can work out like how would you want to see the front? What do you want the front to look like? Anything then that she likes, I will then clip, and that kind of becomes almost like my guide, if you like. I'll pop that in there. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And we're going to leave a little bit of hair out on the other side, do the same. Obviously, you could leave some out through the front. Put that out a little bit. And then I'm just going to clip in on the other side, just with my silver clips. So once I'm there and I kind of know the looseness or the casualness of it, I can then start to work in a simple shape. So I'm just going to split this section in two, and I'm just going to literally roll it and cross it over all the way down to the ends. Once I get to the ends, I'm just going to stick a band on those very, very ends. And if you wanted to, you could add in, if they had quite fine hair, but you were still going for quite a soft texture, I love pure dry shampoo just puffed into this section to give the hair a little bit of grip. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to loop those ends over. So I've created almost kind of like a little loop, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. Just spin her around a little bit. So exactly the same thing. So give her a little brush. I'm using my soft bristle brush this time. Just separate the hair and then twist it. All the way to the ends. And then I'm just going to stick a band on and loop that back through, just as I did on the other side. So good strong bands. These are just like non-snag hair bands. I love clear bands because they're just super easy and they work on all hair types, all hair colours. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull and I'm going to rub, pull and rub, pull and rub with my fingers, just to create a little bit of texture. Obviously, if you've got finer hair at this stage, that is then when you could use shampoo or dry shampoo. So once I've got one side, I'm just going to use my silver clip and just kind of clip that in place. So still nothing is permanent at the moment. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, just pull and rub. super, super casual. And still at this side, I'm just going to clip and pin. So not pinning anything in at this stage, it's still really casual. Just check through the front, the balance on the sides. Okay, look. Okay, so once I get to this stage and I'm just checking kind of like balance, I can now start to look at where I actually want to fix this. So this is now where I'm going to start to commit to the shape. So again, just using a band, so I'm going to clip this out of the way on this side so you can see what I'm doing. I'm literally aiming as I go to cover this band, and I'm going to take a small section from the hair on this side. Just a really, really, really small section. I come around a bit farther. And then I'm going to attach the two sections together, so just with a band. So still with my loop, I'm just going to do a very, very loose connection of those two sections. Now I've got like a loop and a tail, if that makes sense. I'm just going to pull that so I get a little bit of tautness that side. And I'm going to do the same now on the other side. So I'm going to take a small subsection. I'm just coming in just behind the ear, but you could make this section anywhere. And just joining the two together. So just looping it through. So hooking up with my previous band. And I'm just going to give that a little pull and move that up. So once I've got to that stage, I can then start to pin and commit. So now I'm going to go back in with a curvy grip, and I'm actually going to put the curvy grip through the band and in through as close as I can get to her scalp. And to make doubly sure, I'm going to do what I always do, and I'm going to come in, and it's almost like X marks the spot. So they're crossing over and they're hooked together. So I'll show you on this side. So here's my loop. I'm using this to pull the hair taut. I'm now going to pop that loop up and under on this side. And I'm going to come through, and I'm just going to come up underneath the band and cross over. So everything is still nice and loose, still really, really casual. So I want to make this bigger I can. Once I'm happy, I can then add in, if I want to, just a couple of pins. So very, very sort of boho.
Hey, B.
Yes.
Could you show us again how you tied the small piece to the looped hair?
Yes, so I'm going to show you so you can see maybe on another piece. Basically, what I'm doing, so on these twists, when I get to the end of the twist, I just loop the hair over like that and place a band. Then I'm picking up a section of hair. Now this is like anywhere you want it to be. So anywhere you want to join the two sections in together. So for example, this time I'm going just behind the ear. So I take that small section and literally I just band those two together. This then becomes almost like a pulley. So it means that I can push the hair up wherever I want it to be. So however tight to the head I want it to be. So you can literally keep doing that if you wanted to all the way through. So we're doing, obviously our look right now is half up and half down. However, if I want to go further, and this is what gives you that nice kind of casual feeling, if I want to go further, I do exactly the same thing. So I take my two sections, I just give them a quick twist, and I do the same thing. So I come all the way to the end. And this is all about, you don't want to kind of think about it too much, because I think when you think about it too much, it becomes too neat and too tidy. And this is all about like really casual kind of texture in the hair. So all I'm doing is, as I put my band on, I'm just then making sure that I just loop the ends through. Okay, so I've got a little loop. This is fine, don't worry about having a curl out. You can then pull your texture at this stage to whatever you want it to be. Now I can come into this side and I can just pick up a strand of hair this side, so a small strand. And I can join those two together. So maybe you might be able to see a little bit better now. So I'm going to come through and I'm just going to join those two together.
And then B, just a quick time check, you got about 30 minutes left.
Thank you. So once then the band's in, what this does is it allows me then to use this section almost as a pulley. See how I can push that to wherever I want it to be. Now at this stage, obviously I could pin if I wanted to, or I can just keep going. So now I'm going to pick this section up on this side, and I'm going to keep going. So don't worry about these bits at this stage. I'm going to leave her front bit out. Pick up a bit bigger piece of hair. I'm just going to twist again. Twist all the way through. The ends. Pop the ends.
Hey B.
Yes.
We have a concern about hiding extensions properly. With so much going on and with finer hair, it becomes difficult to add volume and yet conceal both the extensions and the pins. Any thoughts?
So one of the things I always do is I've got to be honest, I put the extensions in first and foremost, and then I create the texture. And one of the reasons why I do that is so that I can make sure I can hide them. I think sometimes if you're, how can I put it, if you're putting hair up half the way through, like I've tried this, and this is just me personally when it hasn't worked so well for me. If you're doing like half up and half down, let's say, and you try and put your extension in while part of it's up, so you've almost done the style and now you're adding the extension in. It's very, very difficult then to kind of like hide that and make it blend into hair. So I think if you put your extensions in first and foremost and get to the stage where they're in the right position. So sometimes I will put them up the back of the head, but if I need a little bit more thickness here, I'll actually put them in a diagonal. Then you create the set and the style. So it all becomes almost like one head of hair. I think when it's obvious you can't hide them is when you try and put them in at a later stage. And I think if you do struggle with it, one option that I do is use padding and then put the extension over the padding, if that makes sense. can see we've got this really just like really pretty but very, very casual. I quite like little bits left out. Just really, really pretty hair. And I think this is quite difficult to get when you pin it. I think it's really difficult to get this looseness when you just pin. I think bands are a really, really good tool. And then once you've got your foundation in, which is what we're going to do here, then you can commit with bands. Then you can start to, pins. But I just love this kind of like casual kind of like looseness. So super quick, super easy. Again, this is for somebody that likes just that really kind of like simple hair.
We have a question about where you're pinning it. We can't see the other side.
You can't see. So this is all now really visual. And sometimes these are really, really fine pins. And sometimes what I will do is I'll just fish hook them if I don't want them to fall out at all. So you can just bend them over. These are really easy because they're super fine. And I'm just hooking sections together and pinning sections together. I'm just hooking it in and pinning it in. If I fish hooked that wouldn't come out. The only reason I'm not fish hooking it now is because we're going to do another look. So literally hooking it in and then just pushing it through. But because you've got your bands in, there's no way that this would now kind of like slip or fall. And that's what I think is so lovely about having using these little no snag bands, because it creates such a lovely sort of foundation. So I'm just going to go through on the underneath and just pin it on the underneath. So a nice little crossover. Just to make it a little bit more sturdy. But super pretty. And obviously then, as I always like to do, to give the guests like a real kind of idea, depending on what they're going to have in their hair. I just think it's super pretty then just to add in kind of like little details, just so that they can get an idea. Just have a little check at her front. And then there you go, just super casual, just really pretty hair up. And really quick. Super quick.
Where did you get those the accessory pins?
So I literally picked these up all over. I'm one of these people, when I see it, I kind of buy it. I think these ones were from a company called Claire's Accessories. But I just think it's really nice. I think when you do bridal hair, I think it's important to have accessories on hand just to give people an idea. So definitely pick things up as you see them. So obviously now, because this is really nice and loose, it's super easy and quick to take out. So while I do this, if you've got any questions, fire away.
This isn't a specific question to what you're doing, but do you, what kind of thread do you like to use when doing sewing formal style?
So I use a lot of milliner's thread. It's kind of, I think Antoinette talks about it in her kit list on her class. It's literally on a roll and it's quite stretchy, but the great thing is it does come in all kind of colours, which I think is really good when you're doing bridal hair. My challenge with stitching too much is I always just think of the bride afterwards. It can be quite difficult to get that out. And I have had brides in the past that have literally left their hair in on their wedding night, which I think could be quite embarrassing. But yeah, we just use milliner's thread. We use it a lot at shows as well because it's super, super, super strong. And that's what I think you need, because that's also why I double up on bands as well, because the worst thing you could do if you do use these tools more than grips and pins is you don't obviously want them to break. So I just know the kind of like the bands and the elastic to get, but it is milliner's elastic, and apparently it's actually used for kind of like the waistband in trousers, like an elasticated waistband in trousers. So it gives you an idea of how strong it is. Like you can really, really pull it and it doesn't break. So as we work through now, what I love about this is the fact that we can brush it again and the set will still be there. And I think that's what is really, really important, particularly when you're doing stuff like this. I think when you've got a bride who's got a clearer look, so when we did Bridal Balance, Janelle and I together, you might have a bride that has literally brought in one kind of picture, or she showed you a mood board, if you like, and it's pretty much the same feeling and the same vibe all the way through. And I don't know about you guys, but I just find quite a few brides tend to bring in a lot of pictures, and they don't always realise that maybe there's hair extensions or wefts in the hair. And that's where I think things like this are quite good, because I've got the opportunity to show her a quick version, if you like, of the style that she wants. But then we can also talk about, like, have you thought about extensions or hair pieces to make the hair look thicker or fuller? I think it's easier if you've got somebody that's got a clear kind of like look or an idea. So we're going to do now the last kind of technique, which is still working off of a similar sectioning pattern. So again, you would do this if you wanted to on the side, in the middle, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to stay in the centre parting, and again, I'm just going to section off the front from the back. So I'm actually just going to the top of the ear now on both sides. So my front panel section is slightly smaller. And we do the same on the other side. What are some of the kind of looks that you guys get requested to do, like with brides? Would you say it's more of a casual look, or are you still getting kind of like the full-on sort of look, if you like? So more kind of formal, so more perfectly placed. What would you say that you get asked to do a lot of?
Feel free to just pop your answers into chat. We're seeing a lot of casual.
Yeah, it's the same here. I would say I'm probably now seeing more of that than anything.
Some bold cheek too, and lots of braids.
Yes. I think braids are always in. I think they're always popular. So this is going to be our last look, and this again is super, super, super simple. But now if you think about where we started off, so we started off with texture, we then sort of looked at accessories, because I do think it's important you have a chat with your guests about accessories and where they want them in their hair. Or they might have, I've had it before, where a guest has brought in almost like a family heirloom, which was a brooch, which we needed to adapt to make into a hair accessory. And I think it's really good to know all these things, because often with hair accessories, the tools that they come on, the combs that they come on, aren't often strong enough, and that's why I like to do my curvy grip panel. So this again is going to be something relatively casual. So we just literally separated the front from the back. I can do what I did before. Obviously the bands must be non-snag to be able to get that easiness to pull. If you try to use elastic, like the sewing elastic that we were talking about earlier, you can still obviously pull and create a shape, but it's actually quite painful, whereas the non-snag, you can just get that really gorgeous movement. So what we're going to do now is, obviously I've got this beautiful ponytail, I'm going to give this a really, really good brush through. And we're going to separate this into two. I'm not going to hide the band because I'm not too worried about the band. And at this stage, if this was kind of like my last look, I might use a tiny, tiny little bit of Nutriplenish multi-use oil to get the hair really shiny. So you could do that as well. But we're going to take this section and I'm literally going to knot it. So I'm going to cross over, knot and pull. Okay, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to cross over, knot and pull. And I'm going to keep going until I get all the way to the ends. So just simple knot. Once I get to the ends of this, I'm now going to pop a band in, again on the end. So the same principle, I'm just going to hook the ends over. Use two to be on the safe side. I'm just going to create that little loop. Okay. This now will allow me to pull out the shape very, very gently. So everything's about being given the ability to move the shape around. So I'm now going to twist and pin. So this is all kind of about sort of like pinning where your fingers are. I'm actually going to go in now with quite big pins, but still pins that have got ridges on, because she's got quite a lot of hair. So we're going to go in, and I'm just going to push in and push back through and just pin where my fingers are. These pins are really good because you don't need to use a lot of them to get it to hold and be stable. Sometimes I will anchor pin, and what that means is that I put a pin in, but it's not going to stay. I'm going to have the ability to be able to move it around. And sometimes I will anchor pin and not commit until the bride's kind of gone, yes, that's it, that I love that placement. And I do anchor pinning quite a lot. So just because of the looseness, just because of using a band, I can create and move the shape around. So I'm just going to use one more pin in on that underneath. And a little fine pin, just a tiny one on this end. And again, I like using pins for this kind of thing rather than curvy grips, just because you get a much more nicer finish. I think it's important to use the right tool. So now we've got our side pieces. And this time I'm going to do it slightly differently. So now I'm just going to twist. I might leave a softness at the front. I'm just going to twist. I'm just going to use a silver clip just to hold it in place on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So hopefully you guys can see just what I'm doing. Spin around a bit.
Hey, B.
Yes.
We're getting a bit of chat. Do you think you'll do any class in the future with really structured looks? Less of the casual boho chic kind of thing?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm going to do I'm hoping if we don't have time, I'm going to do a video. But one of the things that we're going to talk about with Janelle, I think it's next week actually, is more structured looks where you have like almost kind of like an Asian wedding kind of hair, if that makes sense, where it's really, really full on and structured. So once I've got this in place, I'm just going to use a band again on the underneath. So I do a bridal class. I do one in Italy, and obviously I do one in London. I do quite a few in Europe, and we change them up. So we go from structured to casual, and to try and sort of keep on trends wherever possible. But it does sort of depend country to country, I've found, as well, sort of trends, because I think it depends whether you're in a city or not. But definitely, if you're I don't know where you're based, but I'd love to see you on a class. Maybe we do it virtually. Maybe we do another virtual class and we do structured hair.
Perhaps in phase 2, as we're planning the next evolution of these classes.
Exactly. That would be really quite nice. So now I'm just literally just refining. And I'm just going to pin this down so I have more of a narrower shape with the back area here. So I'm just going to pin this in just behind the ears. So I'm just going to use another big pin. And just come in. And then do the same on the other side. And I honestly think when you're doing sort of more casual looks, particularly things like this, I think it's super, super important not to spend too much time on it. I think as soon as you start to spend a lot of time on looks like this, you kind of lose it and it starts to look structured and placed. And I think guests who want casual really want casual. I've had guests come around and say to me before, I want it to look like I've done it myself. I don't want it to look like I've been to the hairdressers. So I think it's really understanding kind of what they want. I think particularly if it's like, obviously I live quite close to a beach. But I also think if you're having like a beach wedding, there's always normally a casualness to that. So it's really about knowing what the guests' venues like, as we were talking about the other week. All those sorts of things I think are super, super important. So again, just to make sure that she can really feel as though she's in the bridal kind of like vibe. And we can just add a couple of accessories in. And then you have it. So that's your 5 in a flash. So we've gone from texture all the way through to half up, half down. And now we finished on full up. So super, super easy, super, super quick. And there you have it. So I'm going to hand it back over to you guys and see if there's any more questions that I can answer. I'm going to hop back over to my laptop.
Perfect. We do have a couple of questions while you're doing that. I just need you to turn your camera on. There we go. Perfect.
Hi!
Perfect. Any advice on matching hairstyle to the dress shape or style?
Definitely. I think one of the things that I love is really getting a good idea of the dress and every element of it. So it's not just the neckline. For me, it's also the train. So if you've got like a fishtail train that elongates out the back, I try and follow the hair in that shape, if that makes sense. Because I think you need to be aware of, people are going to see her from the front, the back and the sides, and she's going to be photographed from all angles. So whatever the shape of the dress is, if I can, or the flow of the dress, I try and follow it and I try and mimic it. And also, I think it's so important. I know Janelle and Ricardo did a lovely talk about face shapes, but that's really important as well, because I think sometimes people can bring a picture in and it's a beautiful, beautiful hair, but they might not necessarily have the right head shape. So this is why when I do a trial, and everybody's different, but personally, when I do a trial, I work out how many different looks I can do on them so that they can get a feeling of what looks better and what's more comfortable. I think it's a really good way if you've ever got a guest that's like, no, I want this. I absolutely want this and I'm not going to change my mind. And you know that maybe it's not right for them. I think that's quite a good way of going, well, let's just try this. Let's have a little look. If we loosen this or we leave this down, I think that really helps you out.
Boy, we're getting the questions now. We got about 5 minutes, so we'll try to do a
Okay.
Are you showing bridal hairstyles on shoulder length hair next week? This person has a lot of clients with hairstyles that want the hairstyles you did today, but on shoulder length hair versus the really long hair.
Yes, so I would say we're going to do more structured next week. What I would say is, and this is entirely up to you, and I think everybody's different. If you have got guests that have this shoulder length hair, but their dream is to have this kind of like longer feeling and longer hair, the only way you're going to get it is either with padding, cleverly placed padding, or actually with some sort of form of extension. And that's why I think it's important to talk to your guest about it, because I think most guests are quite happy to go out and be like, oh, well, what kind of weft do I need? Or I mean, if you're happy, or maybe you do them anyway in salon, that could work. But I think when you want casual hair like this, it's very difficult to achieve if you've not actually physically got the hair, if that makes sense. I think it's easier to achieve more structured shapes on that length.
Excellent. And can you say the brand of the Marcel iron again?
Yes, it's WHAM. So WHAM, and it's by a company called Windle and Moody, and they make all sorts of Marcel irons, and I particularly like those because they do get hot.
Excellent. How much time do you allow for a trial?
So I try, if I can. Remember, I don't shampoo and condition their hair. That's one thing I don't do. They do that for me at home. They come in with clean, dry hair. That's something off the back that we agree. So it depends on the bride and it depends on what they want, but anything between an hour to an hour and a half. And I use kind of like my time frame to charge for that. So whatever I could normally do in that time. So if I can do a full set of highlights in that time, then that's what they pay for as a trial. I think if you don't kind of charge your value or know your worth, I think you get into difficulty because a lot of people will see, well, it's just a hair up. And it's not. It's a lot more than that, I think, for a big occasion.
And this is a funny one, but I think an important one. Any suggestions on how to handle an overbearing mother of the bride?
I love that question because we've all been there. I think I've done two things before. One is to like really pull the mother into it so she feels part of it. I've had a situation before which was really, really, really sweet, where actually I got the mother to hold a section for me, and she was, you know, passing me a grip, and you know, she was like, she felt part of it. I think probably where I'm all about preserving your sanity is if you're ever in a situation where they're so overbearing that actually it's making you feel quite uncomfortable and you're not producing the work that you know you can. And I think sometimes, because we've all been in that situation where we've had the bridesmaids, if you've gone on location, the bridesmaids, the mother, you know, all sorts of family coming in. I've tried to sort of like move away into a quieter area and just sort of explain, look, I just really want to work with the individual so I can do the best work possible. And, you know, that helps. But yes, so in other words, put them to work. Absolutely. If I can get them doing something so they're not bothering me, that's great. Or a good one is keep asking them to go and get water or a tea or anything to get them out of the room.
Perfect. And that looks like all of our questions, and we're just at time.
Great. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. You've been amazing.